Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Barbara Proud, but with a name like this, I have been going by Be Proud for quite some time. I consider myself now an artist activist. I'm coming to you from Wilmington, Delaware, where I was born and raised. I have left a few times, but I'll talk about that in a minute. I am a photographer. I am a videographer of sorts, a book publisher. I'm an educator at the University of the Arts and at the International Center of Photography in New York City, where I teach continuing education online. I teach lighting. This is my University of the Arts class at Fashion Week in New York City. This is my fashion class after we came back from that Fashion Week in New York City. We had a great time. And as Lori said, I'm a wife and a dog mom. And now I consider myself an artist activist, and I have been thriving kind of on the power of one and what one person can do to make a difference in the world. And that world for me right now is, and has been, the LGBTQ community. So Lori said that you often like to hear about the career path or trajectory. So I will take you briefly back several decades to, I graduated from the University of the Arts. I mean, from the University of Delaware. And I actually became interested in photography in high school, but I didn't really get fully into it until after I had spent 2 years in the law library and decided that was not for me. So I changed my major to photography and graduated with a degree in photography and art history. Back then, all we learned, you see that little camera there, that all we learned at University of Delaware was black and white 35mm photography. So there were no medium format, no large format, no lighting whatsoever. We had one alternative processes class and one kind of special workshop in color photography, but other than that, that's all I learned. So I had a long way to go when I graduated, and I kind of learned a lot at the expense of the United States government. So after bouncing around a few years after graduating, I went to Europe, and I followed a friend and love interest there. And I got a job first as a bartender, but then as a photographer for the United States government, so in civil service. So I worked directly on a military base, and this is in the 80s. So back then there were some situations with hostages, Iranian hostages. So they had 40 some US citizens, and when they released them, they came directly to the place where I work. So I had exclusive access to these people, more so than all of the worldwide news media who were there. So that was sort of exciting. I photographed everything from 4-star generals to passport pictures to evidence for court cases, training exercises, sometimes just things that I found quite disturbing. I flew in helicopters. I actually had a top secret security clearance to fly in helicopters and photograph the landscape so that they could make a battle plan for when the Russians came across the border. So I did that for 7 years and then came back to the US and started my own commercial photography business. And I guess I got kind of lucky because there was a bit of panache from being able to say I had been living in Europe for 7 years. So it was easy for me to get a few jobs to get me started. And I photographed for magazines, I photographed for events, I photographed for hospitals, for banks. I did a ton of medical textbooks, which were tedious and boring, but paid really well. I did photograph musicians, so Lady Gaga, as well as local musicians. I did portraits, I did some fashion work. I photographed a lot of food, also for magazines. And, feel free to interject anywhere and ask me a question. So, or if you feel better, keep them to the end. So again, more food, magazine work, a lot of events. I photographed for the Human Rights Campaign for 20 years now. So President Clinton, Obama, Biden, Elton John, Jennifer Hudson, thousands of other celebrities. So it's been really a lot of fun and exciting. I still work for them. In 1999, I began teaching at the University of the Arts. And I teach lighting classes there, business practices, fashion and editorial portraiture. I fell completely in love with teaching. It really, it's just so inspiring to me to be around these young students. And I had been photographing also kind of on my own, so personal work. I'd had a few exhibitions in Europe. Coming back, having my own commercial business, it took up a lot of time and I did less personal work, I am sorry to say. But returning to teaching really rekindled that spirit in me. And I had kind of begun a project kind of in 1998, 99, after the death of several family members in sort of rapid succession, 4 and 3 years. And the first was my sister. And after that, I started to look at the world differently. And I was examining things in a more minute fashion. And I began this series. So this was like a complete left turn from where I had been. And I started to take these botanical pictures, so really up close, kind of Georgia O'Keeffe-esque. They were all 4x5 transparency film. And then I had them printed as iris prints, pretty big, like 30 by 40. And I did this for a few years. I was really fascinated with it and I got deeply involved in it. I had several exhibitions. It was really for me about the connection of all things, so the connection of nature and the human body and life. I still enjoy this kind of photography, but after a few years of doing this, and this was an exhibition I had in New York, it had kind of run its course, and I was wondering, okay, well, what's coming next? What should I do next? And I guess you have to be, as an artist, just sometimes life comes to you and the path becomes clear. And I went down a completely different path from this. I would have never expected it, but things happened and it took me down that road. So beginning with October 21st of 2008, my then partner, now wife, and I celebrated our 20th anniversary of being together. So we weren't able to be married then. We became the longest surviving couple in both of our families. So except for in a few instances where there had been a death and that relationship was no longer whole, we were the longest surviving relationship. So the others had been on their second, third, and even fourth try of a long-term relationship. And beyond that, we were also very accepted by our families, but we kind of didn't have the same validation. We were the godparents to the nieces and nephews. We were elder care, pet care, executors of the wills, powers of attorney, executors of even the ex's wills. So it was sort of beginning to wear on me that we just didn't have the same kind of validation. We were fully accepted. That was not an issue whatsoever, but our relationship didn't seem to have the same importance. Along with that, we also didn't get the 1,138 federal rights that the other couples got on the very first day that they would be married for the second or third time. So, this is building for me. And then right after our anniversary, Barack Obama was elected president. but Proposition 8 passed in California, as well as some other measures in other states, Arkansas, Alabama, Florida. And this was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for me. This hit hard for me because I was so hopeful with this presidential election, but then just the thought that these laws could be continuing to be made against my community, just I couldn't take it anymore. And I was tired of seeing people being condemned, my community being condemned, using religion to actually think that death, murder was more palatable than my loving relationship. It wasn't working for me anymore at all. Um, the media portrayed my community like this, mostly the extravagance, the flamboyance, the gay pride celebrations. There were always rainbow everything. That's all we saw. And I wanted people to see this. I wanted people to see my relationship and other relationships like it as, you know, real living human beings with all of the same issues and problems and highs and lows that everyone else goes through. So I thought, well, what can I do? And I teach my students that they can use their art as their voice. And so I said, well, maybe you better walk the walk and do the same. So the only thing that I have is my photography. I'm not an attorney, or I don't have a lot of wealth, or so this is all I could contribute. And how could I make a difference using that? So you've already met Susan and Nikki, and I hearkened back to a photograph I had taken of them at their 15th anniversary. And I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to show this kind of sentiment, this kind of love, um, and ask people or show people a different way of accepting us. Changing laws doesn't change people's minds immediately. So you have to convince them. And the way to do that is for people to get to know you. There's Cosette. So I thought, okay, this is the ticket for me. So I looked at some other projects that were happening. I looked at Alex Smith's States of Union, where she would ask couples to look at historical paintings, and she would give them 4 or 5 to choose from, and then they would recreate that painting um, in their photograph. So another Alex Smith. I also looked at Molly Landreth's embodiment series. Um, both both of them, I respect their work totally, but it seemed to me that this was not the path I wanted to take because of the result that I wanted. So the first picture I took is, again, Susan and Nikki in March of 2009. I think they've been together 40 years now. So, and I wanted to tell our story, the story of my community. I wanted to strip away all the rainbow imagery. And I said, I'm going to do this in black and white so people have to really look at who the subjects are. In the meantime, I also decided to challenge myself to learn something new. So I decided then that I would learn to do video. And this is me wearing all the hats. So I am the photographer, the videographer, the interviewer, the sound person, everybody. It's just me. And because I wanted to educate, I decided that I wanted to have a portrait, and then I was going to have a story, because the portrait would be environmental. It would show someplace special, either the couple's home or someplace special to them. And I thought that a story would take people to yet another level of not only are these people in love, but this is what they've had to endure, just like everyone else, throughout their life together. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do this video interview first. And that way the couples will relax more and it'll be easier to take the portrait. But that kind of backfired in that the couples would talk so long about themselves that we had to rush the portraits. So I had to flip my strategy and start doing the portraits first. So, and um, I'll say if you want to visit the website, I'll give you the links at the end here, but there are a lot of videos on the website. Um, anyway, so there I went. I was off and decided to work on this project. This is Bob and Rich. This was the longest couple in the project. At the time of this portrait, they've been together for 59 years. They met on their first day of college, freshman year, when homosexuality was still considered a mental illness. And they were actually, you know, a really good example of my idea that I wanted to ask people to get to know us. And these two guys moved into an Italian Catholic blue collar neighborhood. Um, it was it was one structure, one house, but it was divided into two houses basically. So they had separate entrances, separate addresses, separate telephone numbers, separate driveways. So the community thought that they were two single men living next door to each other, but actually there's a big hole in the wall. So they did live together. But the neighbors got to know them and loved them. So they would work on cars together. The sons would shovel the snow, cut the grass, but they knew them as people. So they were accepted. They didn't know about their relationship, but still, as people, they liked them. And that was where I was trying to go. So I wanted these pictures to be formally posed, so to give it kind of a heroic air. So not candid pictures, not snapshots, but real people, real images, just being their just beautiful full selves. I didn't vet anyone for appearances, so my only rule was that they had to be in a relationship for at least 10 years. So for me, this project was about longevity and that people were already living for decades together, ostensibly married, just without the protections of the laws. Again, environment was the key. So I didn't know these people often when I would arrive, so I would depend on them to choose if they wanted to be in their home or someplace else, and we would just look together to find the best place. This is an organic farm. This couple homeschooled their children. So again, this picture tells a deeper story than just the two of them together. I tried to include as much diversity as possible in different situations. So this gentleman had lost his partner of 26 years suddenly to a heart attack. So something else that we experience. These two guys were from Philadelphia. I don't know if you know David Lee, but he had an exhibition at the Philadelphia Museum of Art just a few years ago. He and Jack met when they both were recently diagnosed with HIV. So they didn't really think that they would live to be very old, let alone have a long-term relationship. And now they've been together for more than 30 years. I tried to include as much ethnic diversity as possible. This gentleman on the right is also an Episcopal priest. I included the Leather Boys. This couple are gym teachers. They met on the hockey field in the 60s, so classic. I would also talk to people about what to wear too, because I knew I wanted things to be in black and white. So I would ask them to wear darks and lights and not kind of mid-tone beiges and things that wouldn't really stand out. So concentration, it could be blue, black, brown, but darks and lights. This couple have been together for 55 years. This is in Miami. And so I should mention as I go along that this was a pretty big project, big scope. It involved a lot of travel, and so funding was pretty important. So I wanted to mention that. Lori said that was supported by several grants from the University of the Arts, the B.W. Baston Foundation, the Puffin Foundation, the Delaware Division of the Arts, as well as private collectors. Also used crowdsourcing, all of them. So I've done Kickstarter, Indiegogo, GoFundMe. The best one for me is Fractured Atlas. So Fractured Atlas is my fiscal sponsor. So they serve as a sponsoring organization for other arts projects. So when it comes to applying for a grant that has to go to a nonprofit, they are my nonprofit. So I have to get my grant information ready well before the deadline, and I give it to Fractured Atlas, and they add their portion to it, and then we get it to the organization. But that allows me to accept tax-deductible donations 24/7, 365 from either organizations, corporations, individuals. It's all tax-deductible contributions. So from Fractured Atlas, I think I've raised $45,000 over, it's been 10 years, but it's been great. And then, so as
I have a question. Can
yes,
I ask what
absolutely.
years? What are the years of the Black and White series? Like,
I started in 2009, and I'm about to get to the book publishing part, which I published a book in 2014.
okay.
So started in 2009, and it really was the first exhibition was in 2012, and then it was continuing to be exhibited around the country through 2016.
Okay. Amazing.
So as I worked through the years, it occurred to me that I was assembling quite an important document, quite an important collection that no one else really had, and it was really indicative of what was happening at the time. I had portraits of Barbara Giddings and Kayla Hoosen. Barbara Giddings was one of the original gay pioneers. This is her in the 60s, protesting in Philadelphia. She was very instrumental in having homosexuality removed from the American Psychological Association as a mental illness. I have Bishop Gene Robinson and his then husband. He's the first openly gay bishop in Christendom. For his ordination, he had to wear a bulletproof vest because it was really pretty risky for him. I have the first couple that was married in the nation's capital. I have Jenny, you know these people probably. Lisa and Drew, they're the first couple, first civil union in the state of Delaware. Anise Parker, the first openly gay mayor of a major US city, Houston, Texas. And then also the Proposition 8 couple. So that case that was in California, Proposition 8, it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the two lead couples, they had a male couple and a female couple. This is the male couple, Paul and Jeff. And this is the female couple, Chris and Sandy. So I've really got this amazing collection, and I think that I've got to do something with it. But there's one person for me that was missing, and that was Edie Windsor. So it was Edie's case that went all the way to the Supreme Court in 2013. She and her partner Thea had been together for 44 years when Thea died, and Edie was slapped with an enormous inheritance tax, and she sued. She fought back, saying that if Thea was Theo, she wouldn't owe a dime. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court. It struck down the portions of the Defense of Marriage Act, and it's just a perfect illustration of how you just can't ever give up. And when it came to getting Edie's portrait, I didn't give up. I wrote to her, I called her, I emailed her, I tried her attorney, I tried friends. She was too busy. I mean, she was too busy. After the court case, she was going to take a vacation, so I just kept getting turned down. And I just refused to take no for an answer. And so she was the grand marshal of the gay pride parade after she won her court case. So I went and photographed her there thinking, at least I have something. Um, I had a picture of her above my desk and I would talk to it and try to convince her to say yes to me. Um, and finally, I just mailed her a package of what I was doing with a letter just saying, please consider being a part of this project, that it's a really important project and you need to be a part of it. And it took several months, but she did, in fact, call me and say that she would be a part of the project. And it also happened to be my birthday on the day that she called. So it was really quite a special day. Um, we went to her apartment in New York City, spent hours and hours with her, and she told us lots of stories. And uh, the other picture is of she and Thea, so I have them represented in the portrait. So I had the package that I thought I needed. Along the way, I had been doing sample books, so through print on demand. I would use this to apply for grants or to show the subjects what I was doing that I was interested in photographing. But doing a book this way is just way too expensive. This was 80 pages at 12 by 12 inches and it was $150. So that's far too much money for a book. So I needed to go the regular production. And I applied to several publishers and was turned down. So they either weren't going to make any money, they had just done a book like this. Um, I couldn't convince anyone, and I knew that I couldn't wait another 2 years. That maybe I could convince someone, but it would take a long time, and this had to happen now because we had just had the Windsor decision in 2013, and there would be another one in 2015. So I'm in that stretch right there where topic is hot and this book has to happen now. So I knew that I had, um, even if I got a publisher, I would have to raise $30,000 because you basically have to cover the expenses. They don't. Um, and I knew I had very talented friends and colleagues that could help me do this. So I decided to do it myself. And I knew that, okay, I'll probably make mistakes, but I will be able to get something out there that's reasonable. So I created Soleil Press, and Soleil is my dog. So I got to name it however I wanted to. It's quite a process to put a book together. Um, we did sequencing with colleagues at the University of the Arts. One of my colleagues there did the digital separations to tell the printers inks how to lay on the page, because you have to send a different file than just your regular printing files. So sequencing with the stories, the publisher, I had to find a printer. So I got estimates from all around the world: Iceland, Italy, China, the USA. In the end, I had to go with China because it was the cheapest, but they also kind of pursued me and said, send us some files and we're going to send you back an example of what we can do. So they convinced me. And I decided to go with them. There's also the proofreading process, and there's Susan and Nikki again being part of the proofreading team. So I pulled my really smart friends together to look over my writing. Everything went off to the printer. It's about a 6-month process. So once they send you proofs, then you have to wait for the slow boat from China to come across the oceans. I had a brother-in-law with a warehouse who agreed to store them because I printed 3,000 books. I was ambitious. But eventually I had a book, and the book has done really well. It did what I intended it to do, to educate, and it's been used for a lot of different purposes along that way, for marriage proposals, for anniversaries, on and on. Convincing parents to accept a couple who are about to be married who didn't really accept it at all until after they looked at the book. It won 2 gold medals for independent publishing. It's been exhibited 16 times in whole or in part in the US and abroad. The turnout has been great. The response has been great. And as soon as the book came out, I was inundated with requests for, when are you going to do the next book? Because we want to be a part of it. So for me, volume 2 was not going to happen. I just did not see how, first of all, I could afford to pay for it. I would love to do it. Absolutely. I was missing doing the portraits. But when you self-publish, you have to do everything. So you don't get distribution. You don't automatically get into bookstores. You have to call the bookstores yourself and ask if they'll take it. Sometimes they take it on consignment. And if they sell it, they'll pay you. And if they don't, then you have to pay to have it shipped back to you. I would go to do talks at bookstores several states away, and maybe only 2 people will show up. Sometimes there would be 30 people. So I never knew. I would lose money. I would make money. The book did not make money. Let's put it that way. So doing another volume seemed like, I don't see how that is even remotely possible. But again, sometimes life just comes to you. So in June of 2016, I was invited to the White House for a reception, for an LGBTQ reception. So we were able to sip champagne in the East Wing. And then a few days later, there was a massive shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, 49 people dead. It was really devastating to me. And I knew that there was still a whole lot of work to be done. So 2016 was an election year. And at the Democratic Convention, Sarah McBride was the first transgender woman to speak at a national convention. So, I'm thinking things are looking up. This is, we're going down the right path here. But then 11/9 happened, which for me, I like to flip it around and say it's actually 9/11 for the LGBT community. This is the day of the 2016 election. And the next day, I had to fly to Orlando for an opening of an exhibition and talk to my community, who was completely devastated, because after that day, it opened the floodgates for discrimination against the LGBTQ community, and any ethnic group beyond white. It was a bad time. And I knew that there was really a lot of work to be done. I didn't know how I possibly could do it. And then I don't know how many of you know Lee Alter, who founded the Leeway Foundation, but she is my biggest collector, and she sent me a card. She sends like, it's kind of a New Year's card every year. It's not a holiday card, and it was about good fortunes. It's time to complete unfinished business. Your dream must be bigger than your fear. No one is standing in your way anymore. Time to move forward. Real courage is moving forward when the outcome is uncertain. You'll take a chance. Out of confusion comes new patterns. You'll come to realizations in your life that change you forever. You will pass a difficult test that soon will make you happier. And the day I got this, I said, okay, it's just, it's clear that I have to do more work. And I thought that it was probably not really useful for me to do what I'd already done, and that the transgender community, the gender non-conforming community, that's the community that needed the understanding, the acceptance, the love, the visibility. And so I decided that I would do something very similar, but with those siblings. So I still wanted to do couples. I still wanted to stay with kind of my theme of love within my community, but this time with the transgender community. And Sarah McBride, who spoke at the convention, is my neighbor. Actually, I sat down with her, she's now also my state senator. So I sat down with her and talked to her about, you know, my approach and what mistakes I might make and what to avoid. We had a great conversation. Um, and that was it. I started down the road of an entirely new phase of the project, Transcending Love. Um, I I decided that I had to show as much ethnic, geographic, age, socioeconomic diversity as possible. Um, Gay people at this point are pretty wide out in the open, but not the trans community so much. A lot of people don't know that they've even met someone who is trans. Most people will think of trans people as a man in a dress or a drag queen, and I needed to show a whole different picture. So I needed to shoot through a really big, broad lens. And I had First Comes Love. I had my book as my calling card. So I now had a huge network around the country. I knew a lot of people who could connect me to people. And First Comes Love gave me some validity so people would trust me. So in 2017, May, I took the first portrait. And these people came to me and they were about to have a baby. I had just a week to decide that I was going to go. And my boss then at the University of the Arts said, "You have to go." And so I did. So I flew to Las Vegas, Nevada, and I made this portrait. Owen was experiencing labor pains during the portrait, and we thought he was going to have to go to the hospital. So we didn't actually complete the video interview. We had to stop. But this portrait I got so excited about this project. This portrait is just the epitome of what I wanted to do. I actually originally thought that I would also be photographing in black and white until I took this portrait. And while it's not hugely colorful, it just became clear to me that the transgender community is anything but black and white. It's just a full spectrum of different combinations of gender and people, and it had to be in color for me. So this was the second portrait I took, also in Las Vegas. And these are the biological parents of this child. People can look at this portrait and not really know who's trans, maybe both, maybe one. Usually they think it's the guy on the left, but it's actually the guy on the right who carried the child. And you'll find that in the trans community, there's often an intersection of difficulty with employment, difficulty with housing discrimination, difficulty with healthcare, all combining to make financial problems at times. And sometimes people can't afford their hormones or their therapies. And this was one of those occasions when the one guy had to go off of his hormones and so conceive during that time. And they determined that they wanted to be parents and they would have a child. He had a very difficult time with the feminine changes in his body. He referred to himself as the incubator for the baby, not being pregnant. But they're totally cool parents. They're great. The kid is wonderful. She's almost 6 now, I think. This is Pennsauken, New Jersey, Gabrielle and Jaden. Again, this is, I have to walk this kind of fine line because I wanted to make portraits that are kind of palatable to a community that doesn't understand, yet I also want to make sure that I'm taking pictures that they'll be queer enough to make the subjects very proud of how they're expressing themselves and their true selves and their pride. So this picture for me that shows both of their surgical scars is just, it's really perfect for me. This is a couple in Tampa, Florida, taken in 2016. 2 weeks later, the person in the White House determined that transgender people were unfit to serve in the military. So I have a young 27-year-old couple about to start a family and about to lose their jobs. This is Logan and Leda in the Garden of Gods, Colorado. They are both also, Logan is currently still active duty military. Layla was active duty Army. They are both transgender. They have both deployed overseas twice each to Afghanistan and Iraq. They would lay down their life for their commander-in-chief, yet it was one who found them unfit to serve. And they work to this day to help other transgender soldiers navigate their careers. So again, it was important for me to show geographic diversity, because I decided that, you know, if I could show really like this huge swath of the country and tell people that, you know, this is your neighbor and transgender people everywhere, just, you know, say hello, get to know them. So I've been to 24 states to date. The blue ones are where I have yet to go, but I have people waiting, and the pink ones are where I've been. So I don't think I'm done with this project. In other words, there are still a few states that I really want to go to, but I've kind of been on lockdown because of the virus. But as I travel, again, I keep the power of one keeps rolling over in my head, because be an activist, which I consider myself now, I always have to be ready to stand up for my work and for what I'm doing. And I don't ever hesitate. This picture just, it's just the logo of a place. I was in Louisville, Kentucky, and I went into a bar restaurant for dinner. I sat at the bar, and two guys came in, flannel shirts, trucker hats, beards, you know, you can stereotype if you want, but they sat down next to me and we started a conversation. What are you doing here? And this is when I just take a deep breath and say, this is what I'm doing. And we have a conversation. I always have pictures with me, either on my phone, or I have a set of postcard sized pictures that I can show them the portrait that I'm doing and talk to them about the people I'm photographing. And I can see their heads kind of start to tilt, that they've never seen anything like this before. So I never allow questions about the science, what's under the clothes. That's not important. But we talk about the people. And when we part, I know that I have at least cracked open something. I may not have swung open the doors, but I at least know that I've shown them something that will make them think a little bit. This is Rosie and Kit in San Diego. They're raising a child with the biological father and his husband under the same roof. So a 4-parent household. We had to go down 90 steps, 90 slippery steps to this sort of cliff here on the beach. They wanted to do it at sunset. It was crazy. She was about 2 weeks from delivering this child. It was intense, but I love this portrait. This is Camille and Marco in Los Angeles. She's a beauty pageant queen and has competed internationally in some very prestigious competitions. He is actually from Eastern Europe, Czechoslovakia, I believe, or the Czech Republic. And he came to the States, and his friend said, who do you want to meet? Showed him a bunch of pictures. And he said, I want to meet her. And didn't bother him in the least that she was transgender. They are married now. This is T and Bella in Buffalo, New York. Great couple. She speaks 8 languages, but it broke my heart when T told me that he felt like he transitioned down on the totem pole of life, because it was one thing to be an African-American woman, but as an African-American male, people are immediately afraid of him without ever getting to know him. Liam and Diana in Winston-Salem, so he's an ordained minister. She converted to Judaism. This is, again, Sarah McBride, my neighbor, who was married to another a transgender man activist who died 4 days after they were married. This is Carla and Jamie in Nashville, Tennessee. Carla was in the military. She had a veteran's license plate, and when she went to change that to a woman veteran's license plate, she was denied because she didn't have her birth certificate, and her license didn't match paperwork, whatever. Anyway, they denied her. She wore a T-shirt that said, "I fought for your right to hate me," which went viral. This is Jenny and Dee Dee. Jenny Boylan is a very well-known author in the trans community. And her mother said, "It's hard to hate someone whose story you know and who you've come to respect." And that's exactly the premise of this project, that if you can get to know someone, you can learn to accept them. I saw that illustrated many times. This couple is in the farthest easternmost portion of Maine. Super right-wing, super conservative, but Shelley worked in a bar. She got to know the neighbors. They got to like her. Was approached by a man who asked her out, then found out she was transgender and threatened to kill her. So, but her friends that she had gotten to know stood up for her and protected her and told her that they were going to keep her safe, which they did. So I love that story. This is in Detroit, Michigan. One of the challenges that I've faced with doing this project is, people are always wary of being photographed. I don't look good in photographs, whatever. It's a little bit more intense with the transgender community because this is a community that has dealt with body image, body dysphoria all the time. So it was really important for me to share my pictures with them as we were taking them so that they could be comfortable with how they looked. Sometimes the women think their shoulders are too broad or there's a receding hairline, whatever. I want to make sure they were happy. Sometimes they were, and then when I would share the pictures later with them, they changed their mind. They weren't happy. That happened twice. This is Aiden Jenny Lee. Aiden was the first man on the cover of Men's Health magazine. This is Zachary Drucker. She's a very well-known artist now in her home in Los Angeles. Barbara and Kate Bornstein. Kate transitioned back in the early 80s, so a long time ago. So I have some of the transcestors in this project as well. And then the last one I'll share with you is Jake and Hannah. They're actually a British couple who happened to be on holiday in New York. And this is one of the times when the photo goddess is with me. And they had a very tiny Airbnb, and we squeezed into that to take some pictures. And then Jake said, "Well, let's try going up on the roof." And when we got up there, there was this graffiti wall there. And I thought, this is fantastic. Anyway, Hannah was at the time the highest ranking transgender officer in the British military. So the British military paid for her transition. So as I traveled, something was missing for me. So I'm showing all this beauty. I'm excited about it. I'm very happy with it, but I still feel this like there's more. There's something else I'm missing. And in a hotel room one day, I listened to the news, and there had been a report of a transgender woman who was murdered. And this had been happening quite often, and actually exponentially more since 2016. And I thought, this is it. This is the key. So I'm going to show all of this beauty, but I also need to show that there is a dark side to what's happening. And I began a portion of the project, which I call Say Their Names. And so I researched everywhere I had been and everywhere I was going. There had been the murder of a transgender person, typically a transgender woman, and more often than not, a transgender woman of color. So I would go to the location as close as I could find. It might not be the exact square footage, but it would be in the close vicinity of where something happened. So this is an alleyway in Chicago, where the body of Dejanay Stanton, a 24-year-old transgender woman of color, was found with a gunshot wound to the head. And so I would go to these locations and I would contemplate for a while the living human being who lost their life, and I would ask the universe for more love and protection, and I would literally say their names, and then I would make a photograph. Um, Broad daylight always, to show that these are just sort of, you know, normal locations until you know the dark history. It's a convenience store in Houston, Texas. Um, the body of Tracy Williams was found with a puncture wound, several lacerations. Also a transgender woman of color. Former hotel in Louisville, Kentucky, the body of Poppy Edwards, a 20-year-old transgender woman of color, was found shot as well. A lake in Dallas, Texas, the body of a 26-year-old transgender woman of color was found floating. This is Los Angeles, the home of Vicky Gutierrez, a Latino woman of transgender woman. She was stabbed, and then if you see the window up at the top, the house was set on fire. This is a driveway in Nashville, Tennessee, where a transgender woman was found shot in the back of the head next to her car. And the Schuylkill River in Philadelphia. Just about a year ago, the body of Remy Fells, trans woman of color, was found. The body was found in a suitcase with stab wounds, trauma to her head and face, and her legs had been severed at the thigh. So here I am at this juncture of, I'm still doing both of these projects at the same time. I'm considering, and maybe some of you have suggestions of how they should be, if they should be together in exhibitions, if they should be separate, how I should present them, or if they should be, you know, just two completely different projects. I think they need to be together, but I'm still working on that since I don't really have any exhibitions currently lined up. Again, visibility is really the key for me in all of this, but I now understand that that visibility comes with a double-edged sword. So the more visible we are, it can also mean that the more danger we are in. But unless there is this visibility, we won't move forward. So I've had one exhibition of this project. It opened in November of 2019, and it was up for 4 months. It came down right as the country shut down. So at the Stonewall National Museum in Fort Lauderdale, was interviewed by NPR in Fort Lauderdale. One of the coolest things was, though, that the Miami Dolphins sent an entire tour bus of players, staff, and family to see the exhibition. So as part of their efforts towards unity and diversity. So people who would never, ever have gone got to see this project and read about the subjects, which I loved. One of the images from this project will go into the Philadelphia Museum of Art next week. I get to deliver the print. I also got notice recently that the International Pride Photo Awards will take 5 of the images from Say Their Names that will travel the Netherlands for 6 months beginning May 1st on billboards. So that project is going out there as well. So again, in the words of Audre Lorde, as we need to share our words for power, so also do we need to share the contours of our faces and the visual shapes of our loving and of our lives. I fully agree with this. I continue to be aware that transgender women were really what started the uprising and the riots at the Stonewall Inn in 1969 that became a nationwide march, and a month of celebrations in June these days. I honor daily the people whose shoulders I stand on, and I hope that what I'm doing can make a difference for future generations. Um, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you. I am so glad you could give us an hour and a half of your precious time today. I am thoroughly, thoroughly moved. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I appreciate everyone.
Let's open it up for conversation. I think, if we need to, we can unmute ourselves, or we can raise hands, but I think we can unmute ourselves and kind of let each other take turns if there's questions.
I just put some stuff in the chat. So connections to all the websites, to the book, to Instagram, and the fundraiser. So all of you have that information now.
Thank you. Which print did the Philadelphia Museum of Art take?
That's very interesting. We had quite a conversation about that. They actually, they chose the African-American couple that, T and Bella, that I showed in this presentation.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
They chose the work in general for the prize, but then Peter wanted to actually be able to pick which picture he wanted himself. So I'm excited. And I printed it at PPAC.
Of course you did, darling. What are some questions, y'all?
Yeah, Barb, do you see this Transcending Love as being a book project, or mostly a traveling show, or?
Well, both, I guess. Traveling show is always great. A book has the potential to reach a broader audience for people that can't get to a physical show. I do have a publisher who said they were willing to make a book, but I guess they told me about a year ago that they would be willing to do it, but this is again, I would have to raise $30-some thousand, and asking people for money right now under the pandemic when everybody is really struggling seemed like I couldn't fathom doing that. So I had told them that I didn't feel like I was completely finished. I wanted to hit a few more of the really conservative states before I thought it was done. And once I do that, I think I can move forward. But again, it will be a struggle to raise the money. And now I don't know what to do with, say, their names and how that might or might not be a part of it, or if they should be 2 volumes to get. I don't know.
I was thinking about, a book that in one direction it's the portraits, and then you flip it over, maybe even turn it upside down or something, and it's the other.
Oh, that's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think they should be together in a book and in an exhibition. I think it should be twofold of an experience. I think it's critical. And I also think, I don't know, I think that there's, I'm going to keep thinking about this, because I feel like this is actually, you found yourself almost finished with a project at a very pivotal moment in our conversation around the trans community, because the politicians, the right wing, is working fast. And I think there would be support for the project to counterbalance how efficiently the right wing is creating laws hurting the trans community. So I have some ideas in my head that I can sort of write down in an email of
Sure.
places to go to, but so I'll just see which ones you've approached and see how if any of my suggestions help.
Yeah, and I'm continue to take names. So I've made 60 portraits. There are 160 couples on my Excel spreadsheet total, and I kind of have to wait until I might have a little cluster of couples
Right.
So I know I want to go to Atlanta next, and I know I can do that. But if I only have one couple and then I get there and something happens and they have to cancel, then I've just, I've lost $1,500. So if I have to travel, it has to be that I know I can at least get 2, if not 3 couples while I'm there. So anyway, that's to say I'm still taking names.
I have 4 suggestions now. I'm going to send you in a yes, Taddy.
Yeah, I have a question. For a thought, would it ever occur or be possible to include in this collection? I mean, I was so moved by it. It's just absolutely very powerful. But could you include photographs of these people in an environment where they are accepted in their work and by their neighbors, and images of them interacting with the community, with the people who are accepting them? I mean, I don't know how to express it more.
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying, and I do. I have thoughts about doing some other photographs beyond the portraits too. Sometimes it's a time issue because this takes 4 or 5 hours. So, people have to be really willing to give up a huge chunk of time in order for me to get all of that done. I've thought about making, picking a certain group of couples and maybe going back to them and doing more of a film and other photographs. So I don't know. I don't feel like I'm done by any means, but I do want it to be out there. As Lori said, it's the time.
Rosemary?
Yeah, I love the portraiture, and I thought the one portrait of the couple on the floor reminded me of John Lennon and Oko, but the way the hands were intertwined, it was just like Indian goddesses, but also them, and it was just so sculptural. But it's in the rest of the work too, the lighting, the people together, the beauty of all the couples. So that being said, I find it that you want to put the violence of the trans people connected to all these loving couples, perhaps maybe on one page with little nutshell photos of that this is still going on. But just as you said, you didn't want to represent gay couples, with the the theatrics of the rainbow flag, that not the rainbow, but the gay parades. You wanted to show people in regular settings. I also feel these people are very brave and want to have a normalcy in their life. And if you start bringing the violence into this beautiful, all these beautiful, warm, loving portraits, it's kind of like, I think, kind of dragging them down a bit. So it's just my opinion. So
good to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's really useful, Rosemary. I think that's a good point. I mean, there's also there's a way to separate it and put it in an, I don't know, that's really good point, Rosemary. I'm going to stop talking.
Yeah, I had one, I guess, curator in a portfolio review. Someone told me that she thought that should be maybe like 2 portraits or 3 portraits and then one of the landscapes. And I completely disagree with that. That's too close together. I think it needs to be a separate experience somehow, but not neglected.
Maybe something like I think said, like maybe at the end, but that we still have a long way to go, and then show why, with just some maybe 9 or 12 little nutshell portraits of why, and with an explanation or something. But that's just a thought. I mean,
no, it's really important for me to try to have people understand that the transgender community needs to be accepted, and then that say their names is why, because people are dying.
Yes.
More
Thoughts,
questions?
feedback, love?
You talked a little bit. I mean, I just want to say first, of course, how moved I am and how beautiful what you're doing is. And you talked a little bit about it throughout, about your progression, whether things came easily the next step or not. But I'm just curious, overall, do you feel like the universe kind of was the wind at your back and that things came along at the right time in general?
Totally. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. It just have to be open to that and not think, you know, okay, this is where I'm going next after this, and just be open to the energies that are surfacing. And the way became clear to me,
Wonderful. Thank you.
especially with the trans project, because I really didn't know how I could possibly do something else. And then it just, you'll
Mhm.
figure it out. You just do it. Just take the step. So,
Thank you
and
for
I've had
sharing.
Susan and Nikki behind me for decades now. So they're amazing, amazing people, and really dear to me.
Thank you for sharing that with us today.
Yeah, go for it, Rosemary.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to just ask a technical. Were you using digital or film in these portraits? Digital and the smaller
Yeah.
format, smaller, you know, like a SLR, you know, I mean, like a Nikon or something, or a Hasselblad,
Mhm.
or small.
Yeah,
Okay.
DSLR. Yeah. I mean, again, it was important for me to, especially in the trans project, to be able to show the pictures so that they could see how things looked and make sure they were okay with things and could have their input into their own portrait. It's really helpful. One of the hardest things a lot of the times is to you know, these people are not models, and you know, most of the time when you aim a camera at someone, their reaction is to just smile for the camera, and that's what I was trying to avoid, is to not be taking the next holiday picture for people. That it's like, you know, please look through me, look at the world and show them who you are. And it's a process sometimes to get to that point. So a lot of times you have to take, even though what they would like to do is not, you think maybe is not the best idea, sometimes I just have to do it and say, okay, well, maybe we should try this, and maybe we just work through it without me saying just, no, that's a bad idea. So to keep everybody engaged and working on the goal together.
You dropped the video part though, right? You're not doing that anymore?
No, I am.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I am. I've gotten better at it, but it's time consuming, and it's unfortunately, again, all I really mostly have time to do is them sitting there talking to me and answering my questions. I would like to be able to do B-roll and footage of them in their day-to-day lives, but it's so much time. So again, I may go back.
Do you do the editing too? I mean, I've done what you've done, and I it's just too much. Okay. And do you like it?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
Editing video is difficult for me right now. I'm not fast at it, but I do like it. I did with one of the couples. I didn't show their portrait. Michael and Dan, Biella Martin Studio down in Old City. We did a music video about Edie Windsor's Circle Pin.
Yeah.
That one, it's been in 16 festivals.
Oh, that's great.
Worldwide, and I edited that video. That was like the very first thing I edited.
Wow.
So
Well, have you applied for have you won the Leeway Transformation Award?
no. So here's the thing, the Leeway grant is for Philadelphia
Oh
artists,
yeah, that's right.
or anyone living in the 5 surrounding counties, including Camden, but not as far south as Delaware. However, I've done better because Lee Alter the founder of that grant, is a collector. So she has collected 12 images from First Comes Love, 6 from Transcending Love, and wants to collect Say Their Names as well. So she's a huge supporter. And again, she was the impetus for me to say, okay, you can do this.
Right.
So that card that she sent really pushed me over the edge.
I get it. I get it. Rosemary wants to know what the circle pin is about. Could you please describe the story behind that?
Yeah, so back in the 60s when Edie and Thea were together, you really couldn't be that out as a gay couple. And so because Edie couldn't then wear a diamond engagement ring, Thea gave her a circle of diamonds pin, which she wore and is in the portrait that I took. She's wearing it. So the music video is about that story, about, it's just 6 minutes, I think, 4 to 6 minutes, about this pin and her being able to wear it, which we filmed in her apartment in New York with 2 actresses, musicians from Broadway playing the young Thea and young Edie, and then Edie herself playing herself.
Can we watch it, or is it only for festivals?
No, you can watch it. It's
Can
on
you
the
have a link?
website. Yeah, if the website, if you go to firstcomeslove.org, under the videos.
Got it.
There.
Okay. Very good. Very good. All right. Everybody has the websites to look at it more.
Yep, there's a whole like stack of books behind me in boxes that need homes.
Yeah, thank goodness for the brother with a warehouse.
The
So
other reason I need a publisher because I don't have anywhere to put another book.
you do need a publisher, and you're going to get one. I'm convinced, Barbara. I'm convinced. I think the hustle is making the work, and just trying to figure out how to get you the resources for another person to do the hustle to get this stuff out. You know, because I mean that's what it is. It's like you're working so hard as the maker and the creator, and I mean you need a whole nother person to do the work behind the publishing and the exhibitions and everything like that. So you know, one of my strategies is to find a partner, an institutional partner. So you know, I'm thinking in terms of like asking an institution to do that for me. Right. So I got to believe in the project, but you know, I need that kind of support behind the work and underneath it, you know, and mine would be video editing, video production, you know, but thinking about in terms of an institutional partner could be useful. I don't know if you've approached anybody, but
yeah, that's a great idea.
think about organizations that are talking about what you're doing and reaching out. Would you consider being an institutional partner? Oftentimes they have, you know, college students who are interns. They also have staff people that, you know, I mean, they have these kinds of resources that could do that work, and you could keep finish the damn project.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And, you know, along the lines of the hustle and the partner, I was lucky enough to have a partner who has allowed me to do this and made it possible. At a time when we were taking care of my 90-something-year-old mother and aunt and moving them out of their homes and into assisted living, and me needing to travel a lot. And my wife, Allison, made it possible for me to do that. So having a great partner in life is key to being able to do your work sometimes.
Yeah. Jen?
Hey, Barbara, have you talked to the historians over at the William Way Center?
I know them. I exhibited First Comes Love there at the William Way Center back in 2014. So we haven't talked about the newest project yet. No.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I was going to say, but you already know them. So I was going to offer an intro if you didn't. But I was like, obviously UArts and William Way are so close also geographically.
You could poke them.
Happy to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm also, considering where eventually I will archive all of this too. So that's another question on my mind is there are a few big LGBTQ archives in the country, but there's not like one big museum. There are a few different places. So it's something I have to think about.
The Smithsonian. That's my suggestion.
They have a book at least.
Yeah, the National Portrait Gallery.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Also, these are institutions that you need to connect with curators with. The National Art Gallery, Portrait Gallery, the Women in the Arts Smithsonian and Museum. Yeah, I think that those are really good directions.
Thank you. That's great ideas.
And also, if you haven't shown the work in Smithsonian Magazine or other magazines, that really gets the word out, right? And you could reach out to the Smithsonian, I can send you the editor's address for their magazine.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've been in a few magazines and like BuzzFeed, but it's just I be honest with you, the response to the trans project is not as big as the First Comes Love. I think people are still a little nervous about
That's not surprising.
their community and their readership. I don't know what it is. Like the grants aren't coming the same way, the exhibitions aren't coming the same way. I'm not sure what the reason is.
Okay.
I'll keep at it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's a little bit after afternoon, and I feel like you've been incredibly generous. Thank you so much.
Fabulous.
Be proud. It was amazing, and I'm so glad we have recording. So I'm going to share it with y'all, and you can send it out to as many people as possible, because I really feel like this is another talk that you don't have to be a photographer to like love. You know what I mean? And so, yeah.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you all for listening and being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Stunning work. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well done. Get some rest. Have a great weekend. See y'all.
All right, you too. Thanks, Lori.
Bye.
Hi.
Bye.